Hill, and yesterday several crypto-related bills failed to clear a key procedural hurdle in the House. What's your reaction to all that chaos we saw on Capitol Hill yesterday, and what do you think this means for crypto regulation? What happens next?
I think, to be honest, this is a bit of a failure on the industry's part to play this the correct way politically. I think it was a mistake to have all three of these bills voted on at the same time, as opposed to starting with the Genius Act, which is a sort of important must pass and what should be uncontroversial bill to provide a regulatory framework for stablecoins. And then I think it's a failure to educate some of the key folks involved. I think there are some Republicans who feel like they don't really understand what this legislation is about, and the crypto industry needs to do a better job to fix that. And I think that there are some members, especially of the Freedom Caucus, who are a little bit confused about the difference between a private stablecoin and a central bank digital currency, and that we as an industry need to do a better job describing why those two things are distinct and should not be treated the same way. But I think that the future of crypto legislation really does sort of hang on whether we are able to get the Genius Act specifically passed into law or not. If we do so, I think that will provide momentum for future legislative efforts. And I think if that doesn't happen, it's going to be very hard to convince House leadership to take up crypto legislation in the future.
And we're going to dig deeper into these three bills in just a second, but the measure had been widely expected to pass, and the failure of the rule yesterday was a rare case of House Republicans refusing to take direction from President Trump.
Real quick, in the background, this is the Clarity Act being voted on right now. This is live up here, and this is earlier today by CNBC. Just give me a few.
Who urged them to vote yes in a post on his Truth Social site. What does that signal to you?
Yeah, I think it signals sort of, I think there are three reasons that didn't happen, and each have a different signal. One of them is the decision to put all of these three bills together, which I just think was a tactical mistake.
Agree.
I think they should, a vote on each one of them might have gone differently. I think the second is, I think there are sort of moderate Republicans who don't feel great about the way that the big, beautiful bill went through and political pressure they received there. Maybe, they don't feel like they understand these crypto bills well enough. And they just need to kind of wrap their mind around them a little bit.
Clearly, none of the people voting on this right now truly understand the bills they're voting on. Because let's be real, we are deep in this space. A lot of you have been here with me for years. We've been here 6 years, and I couldn't tell you some of the things that are in this bill, some of the details. Now, these people are twice our age, way less technically advanced, not in the space, of course. And this is, neither aisle here. Of course, they don't understand it. So they're largely voting, obviously along party lines, but largely voting in the dark. And I would imagine that almost none of them feel comfortable truly with any of these bills. And when you kind of roll that concept onto the big, beautiful bill that just passed, kind of all this attention to legislation going on in the last few weeks, it makes sense. I think this guy makes a great point with these bills should have probably been spaced out. Went for the Genius Act first, and then had that passed and used that momentum to continue on. So we're going to just listen to a little bit more of this clip, and then we're going to move on. We're going to look at all the things moving, all the spice. In the meantime, smash those likes, hype it up. This is an emergency spice stream. Let's go.
More, and I think there are efforts underway to do that. And then the third is, frankly, there are some parts of the Republican Party that I think have fallen prey to either misinformation or in some cases sort of borderline conspiracy theories about what stablecoins are and how they operate. And I think that a couple of the defections on the right are just because of that sort of misinformation.
Now, as you mentioned, one of the three bills in limbo after that failed vote is the Genius Act stablecoin regulation bill, which, as you noted, the Senate passed last month with some Democratic support. You posted on X yesterday that Congress should focus on passing the Genius Act. Why do you think that should be a focus, and what would change for the industry if that stablecoin bill becomes law here in the U.S.?
Absolutely. So I think there are two primary reasons to pass the Genius Act now. One is that it's just good policy. There's some concern among Americans that stablecoins are not adequately backed by dollar or dollar equivalent reserves like treasury bills. The Genius Act would provide consumer protection to make sure that if you have a stablecoin, it is redeemable on a one-to-one basis for dollar in a full reserve model. It also provides some insulation from White House politics between administrations for companies or financial institutions like banks that want to use stablecoins, which are frankly more efficient ways to move dollars than the legacy banking rails or SWIFT or FedNow, that they can go ahead and use those rails and that the rules won't change just because there's a new president in the future. And so that's really important. And it's also really good policy because stablecoins are good for the US. They provide a very large source of demand for treasuries, for US sovereign debt. Our Treasury Secretary, 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐫𝐭, has estimated that they could provide at least $2 trillion of demand for US government debt, which is really helpful in keeping yields down, which is a real priority of this administration and good for the dollar. And then it proliferates dollars around the world to places that will, A, provide demand for dollars, which is good for the status as the world reserve currency, and B, is really good for people, especially in authoritarian countries who don't have access to US bank accounts and for whom it's very dangerous and difficult to get access to physical cash. So it's good policy. The other reason to pass it, really specific to the digital asset in crypto industry, is that it's going to be very hard to pass any kind of crypto legislation if we don't get this one through. This should be the least controversial, sort of most modest piece of legislation. It's easier to wrap your mind around stablecoins than it is on the difference between a utility token and a meme coin and a security and a commodity. And stablecoins, I think, other than Bitcoin, are the only part of the digital asset industry that so far has found robust product market fit. And there are just fewer regulatory issues around Bitcoin. And so if we get this bill passed, I think that helps create momentum for other strong industry priorities like a market structure bill and amending the securities laws to do all sorts of exciting Web3 stuff. And conversely, if this Genius Act falls flat, if we can't get this across the finish line, it's going to be very hard anytime soon to convince sort of House leadership or Senate leadership to really take up crypto legislation. So I really do think the Genius Act for the industry is a must-pass bill if we're going to move forward with any of our legislative priorities.
I like it. I know that went on a little long. I think you nailed some really important parts of that. Really important things. It puts into context, this is the reason I wanted to share it, puts into context some of the maybe logic behind. You guys have noticed as we've covered everything, the SEC, just everything the US has put out about crypto, they're focused on stable coins. It, to me, appears that maybe the greed has caught their eye, or maybe the lens that the government views crypto through has become very favorable through stable coins, as they see kind of like free lunch. They see dollar signs, they see money to be made. And I think maybe that wasn't quite true when it comes to Bitcoin, the altcoins, the meme coins, whatever. I think that they finally found something that they believe they can capitalize on in a meaningful way. And that is why I think we're seeing all of this stablecoin focus. It was confusing to me at first. I didn't really get it at first. It's like, why aren't they talking about Bitcoin? Why aren't they talking about altcoins? It's starting to make sense. They are looking to cash in on this. They clearly see big dollars involved. And maybe that comes from Tether. Tether, the most profitable company ever per employee, probably going back any amount of time, like scaling it out to like the medieval times. Per employee, they are the most lucrative company to ever exist. I think they're trying to maybe take a little bit of that pie, take a little bit of that money. They're getting a little greedy. That's what I think it is. So update on HR, House Resolution 3633. This is the Clarity Act to provide clarity. I do not know the details of how they're going to provide clarity other than separating jurisdiction, which is almost redundant to say, from the SEC and the CFTC, saying that the CFTC will regulate commodities in crypto, such as Bitcoin, and that the SEC will regulate securities in the crypto space. And that really is not clarity. That is how it works already outside of crypto. And so really it's just applying it to crypto. Now, I believe there's more to this bill, but I do not know it yet. It's under consideration. I believe it's guaranteed to pass here. There's 300 votes yes, 134 no. I believe there's only 4 more votes waiting. At this point, they might as well just close it. They already have a super majority on that. So for the gist of it, it's aiming to establish a comprehensive regulatory framework for digital assets by clarifying the roles of the SEC and the CFTC, as I just said. It really does. I mean, that's really not a lot of info. It really doesn't do much. Its key provisions seek to avoid applying the Howey test, this I did not know, to digital assets, and instead creating new categories like restricted digital assets and digital commodities to streamline regulation. That actually makes some sense. Critics argue it weakens consumer protections by limiting the SEC's ability to proactively address fraud. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know about that. Seems like a bunch of whiners. And does not robustly enforce the Bank Secrecy Act. I don't know. I don't know how that's really related. But there are two other bills. The Anti-CBDC Surveillance Act. Let's see. They're done. They're all clapping, patting
Pursuant to
themselves
Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business and the vote on passage of Senate 1582, on which the yeas and nays are ordered, the clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 1582, an act to provide for the regulation of payment stablecoins and for other purposes.
The question is on passage of the bill. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
We're voting again? This is a separate vote? Another vote? Another vote. It's a vote packed. I think this is what the guy in the video was saying. It's not only confusing and kind of exhausting, but they're doing them all in a row. I didn't actually know that they're doing them all in a row. This is HR. Let me look it up. HR 15. House Resolution 1582, which is... Wait, okay, this is not crypto related? This is not crypto related, to my knowledge. This is the medical care tax deduction for a joint return or head of household. All right, well, we certainly don't need volume on that, but we'll leave this up in the corner just in case anything real spicy happens. You're tuned in because, well, it is time, my friends. We were watching Ethereum yesterday, but today, XRP stealing our attention, rocketing back to last year's highs. Now, I've had a long relationship with XRP. Some good, some bad. Long relationship here. For many, many moons, we talked about XRP's multi-year bull flag, we'll call it. Can't really see it. Can't really see it there. Let's do it this way. Here it is. Multi-year bull flag. We saw XRP essentially blast off in 2017 and hit an explosive all-time high, only to spend the next 8 years almost doing nothing. Now, that's what almost everything in this space did. Things that were around in that time, from, I'll say, 2016 onwards, that experienced a 2017 all-time high, have almost the same chart. And this is what I said, we have a long history. They all looked like this, but last year in Q4, XRP finally set the path and blasted, you all remember this at this point, blasted up to its previous all-time high. This was exciting, even though I've never been a big XRP holder. Certainly would be if you're a big XRP investor. But this was exciting because I compared this chart to many others, such as Litecoin, but really almost anything that is around from that era has this same chart. And I said, the reason I'm rooting for XRP is because if XRP breaks this giant flag, this multi-year consolidation, because it is so similar to almost every other chart. And you guys know for me, you know for me it's Litecoin, right? It's like I look at it and this is the one I most commonly compared it to. If XRP is able to break this mold, then perhaps we will see other coins do it too, or perhaps we'll see maybe the majority of these coins that have done so little for the better part of a decade make the same move. Now, we haven't quite seen that happen on other charts yet. I will admit, I'm still remaining on the hopium side. Litecoin's at $102. Still looking good. The altcoin market's looking good, but XRP really led the way, and this still can play out, even though we haven't quite seen it yet. It spent the entire year of 2025 underneath its previous all-time high from the previous quarter, Q4 last year, and today we see it retesting those highs. This is pretty wild. Very, very wild stuff. Now, if we look back to Q4's breakout, that was November, about November 11th, mid-November of last year. I don't believe it front run the breakout, did it? November 11th? No. So this was, this was the week after Bitcoin broke out of its March high. and put in new all-time highs. We can see the 11th Bitcoin had already put in one candle break. And here we go, XRP following suit again, keeping up with the market. I don't have a narrative or a reason kind of why this is happening other than the chart, right? The chart is good. We are seeing April's lows defended. This was our qualifier that we talked about yesterday on stream, is look at your altcoin and do this checklist. Look at April's low. Has it gone or traded lower? Has it broken April's low? No. XRP did not. Then go to May's high. Is May's high broken? XRP, yes, indeed had. If both of these are true, your altcoin likely has some shorter term upside, likely looking for higher prices. XRP fell into that category, putting in a strong higher low and now running to all-time highs. So what is next? Of course, it's hard to ever know, right? It's hard to ever tell. When coins get to all-time highs, we have seen many different resolutions, many different outcomes, including maybe like what we saw on Sol at the end of last year. Solana kind of nudged its all-time high, fell back down, still hasn't gone back to those levels. That's always on the table. But when we see altcoins, or really just crypto in general, break all-time highs, we use our Fibonacci tool to help give us an idea of where price exploration might take the chart. We've looked at this before, we'll look at it again. Just take the Fib tool, connect it to your high, down to your low. For this, it's December, January, down to April's low, and use that 1618 to 2 extension. That brings us around here, this $5. I'll just say like $5, $6 target, kind of rough. The exact number would be $5.39. Pretty good upside. But this is not on the table until we see the high break. And literally this is like happening right now in real time on this stream. That's why we're emergency spiced, right? Literally, wow, my timing couldn't be better. Literally 2 minutes ago, right here. A fraction of a cent, a 10,000th of a cent. XRP got close. A thousandth of a cent off from the previous high. Got my words all jumbled. What we want to see here, obviously, is candles breaking above $3.40 and holding on to those gains. I don't need this anymore. Holding on to those gains to look for that price exploration to the upside and put that $5-ish, $6-ish target in sight. We yesterday, really, Ethereum had our attention as Ethereum was very, very much rocketing, right? And we talked about the implications of Ethereum moving while Bitcoin didn't. We said that almost by definition, Ethereum needed to pump or needed to regain ground against Bitcoin. Wow, look at hit the TP target for BTC and slowed down. We need to see this move upward in order to put downward pressure on Bitcoin dominance. And that is because Ethereum is the second biggest crypto by market cap. We're getting there. I have a whole thing. Don't worry. Keep smashing the likes. Keep hyping it up. Keep chatting in the chat. So to put downward pressure on it, we needed to see Ethereum move. We got it. And now the timing of XRP doing a similar maneuver is actually quite interesting. Yesterday I talked about if Ethereum can hold about the 3,300 mark, we may see alt season here. We may see dominance top out. We're going to get to that as well. We have everything lined up. My mind is clear and crisp today. But XRP putting on gains against Bitcoin as well. You can see here it is lagging though. We're seeing it back to its USD highs. This is actually really important. We're seeing it back to its USD highs, but it is not back to its BTC value highs. Now, this is a much harder measure, and we almost never, if ever, see coins really do this. This is the high from last year, and if you zoom out, you can see in the bigger picture, we'll get rid of that wick. There we go. In the bigger picture, you can see back here in 2017, it was about 10 times. Its value versus Bitcoin was about 10 times greater than it is today. This is a strong looking chart. I could see this going for higher highs. I would not hold my breath, and I would not bet on it returning to its all-time high against Bitcoin. We've just never seen that in the space. Maybe there's a first time for everything. I don't think that is the probability, the good probability to bet on. But what I would bet on is perhaps a return to last year's high and maybe a little bit higher, right? Maybe we'll see a breakout. We'll see some kind of gains put on. Maybe we retest 2020's highs, etc. But we see those about a 20% gain from here to previous highs in, I guess the beginning of this year, January, December last year. So we're going to take that 20%. We're going to look at the USD value. This is a little thing I like to do. Let's add 20%. Let's see where that takes us. $4. That puts us above the all-time high. And this is if Bitcoin doesn't move at all, which is really not likely, but it's an interesting experiment to do. If Bitcoin does not move and XRP just continues to close this gap against Bitcoin and go back to its yearly high, I bet there would be some profit taking there, at least a breather. A $4 XRP could happen pretty quickly. We're seeing this happen on Ethereum right now as it's closed that gap. It's held 3,300. I think, honestly, it's looking to move higher. I haven't closed my long yet. But all of this brings us to the altcoin season question. Dominance broke through the middle of the channel yesterday, and today has continued to the downside. If you're all in on alts, probably reason to celebrate, probably reason to start getting excited. This is beginning to look very, very good for alts and very, very bad for my higher Bitcoin dominance calls. Is what it is. Sometimes I'm wrong. I will say that it has not totally invalidated yet, but you can see kind of a change in momentum here. I would make the argument that it is still within its market structure. May's low is very, very close. It would not take a lot to see that break. But if May's low breaks, man, it is hard not to imagine a scenario where we move back to maybe 60%. We'll see that market structure shift. Likely, you get some kind of bounce here, but that begins potentially that move to the downside. This is one of the longest, or the longest, red dominance we have seen this year. I think this is the fourth week now. We've only had singular weeks of dominance moving down. This is like the fourth one. Things are starting to look a little different. Momentum does seem to be slowing. I wouldn't count out, and this isn't just me wanting to be right, I wouldn't count out one more move, one more kind of blow off top move. I'm still betting on that for dominance. But as XRP and ETH take back what they've lost against Bitcoin, that is direct downward pressure. I think I missed a thought that Ethereum's the biggest. XRP is right up there. I don't know if it's like the second biggest market cap now. Let me check. That's embarrassing. Second biggest under Bitcoin. So, all right, good. Almost by definition, XRP had to do this as well to drive dominance down lower. What's interesting is if we really are going to see dominance break and top out and total alt season begin, likely we should look at the next top market caps to make gains against Bitcoin. So that would be what? BNB, Solana, Dogecoin, Tron, Cardano, I guess Hyperliquid now, Stellar. Maybe that's some good alpha to keep an eye on those larger caps there. Because if we're going to have further pressure, further selling off of dominance, it's going to have to come from Ethereum, from XRP, from BNB, from Solana, from Dogecoin, etc. Small changes, small pressures can come from elsewhere, but the majority is going to come from those coins. And not surprisingly, those coins are looking pretty good right now. All of this lines up with the legendary, the mythical signal that we have been waiting for. Seems like forever. Here we are. Earlier this week, Monday, crypto broke to a new all-time high as a total market cap. Tuesday sold off. Yesterday retested that high but held on to the gains, and today we have a new all-time high a new all-time high on total crypto market cap. This is actual bull market territory. This is, we have been at all-time highs, let's say at the end of last year. We've been retracing since then, but this is where we have long predicted that alt season would begin. When total breaks. Total has broken. This is a convincing candle now. I guess the only thing I'd be waiting for is see the week, right? Let's see the weekly close above all-time high. That'll be a good confirmation. But at this point, we're pretty much locked and loaded. I think total crypto market cap is looking to make a move to $5 trillion. Currently at just under 4. That is oddly Oddly, a 20% move. Remember, XRP about a 20% move against Bitcoin back to its yearly high. Total crypto market cap looking for about a 20% move from here. Ushering in alt season. Ushering in the mad gains. The mad gains. Where was I at thought-wise? I had a whole thing. I did pretty good, though. I stayed on track pretty well so far. There we are. XRP during this live tested within a hundredth of a cent or something. The all-time high from last year. Not the best response. This is not dream crushing. I wouldn't say it's cooked or something, but not the best response. Ideally, you'd want to see a candle close above $3.40 and just a runaway price explosion, right? Runaway price, higher and higher. Shorts liquidating, longs opening, kind of a runaway scenario. That is not what we are seeing. In fact, our hourly candle with 14 minutes left is looking potentially to trade red. There it is, trading red right now. This may suggest what? A little trip back, maybe 320. I'm talking very low time frame. Let's see. Nothing really good there. Hold up. 4-hour order block 326. Might be looking for that. Maybe we got what, four more hours. I could see that happening today or after today's close. This looks strong though. We were patiently waiting for maybe 250 as we were running up. I was saying $3 is resistance. We might look for this 250 move before we test that all-time high. We have opted not to do that. While 250 to 260 is still on the table for XRP as an entry, we have moved past resistance, broken, tested that all-time high. So logically now, $3 becomes an untested support. There's some kind of risk to reward there. I don't know. Looking at something like this. When resistance breaks, we look for it to be tested as support. It doesn't have to do it. But that is just good, clean trading. And that is the new revision on that. That's the new look. Where are we? I think I had like one or two more things. XLM. We'll go to XLM. XLM, all-time high, actually much higher than price is right now. Currently battling it out at 50 cents. This is a solid psychological resistance. Previous resistance level. We were looking for the clean classic trade. We had a solid, I won't even say solid, a pretty impressive long. Now we placed at the beginning of the year for XLM at 22 cents, looking for that 50-cent payoff. That happened this week, last week on Sunday. Now looking potentially for that same move. Well, we could always rip longs at all, like basically, you know, all-time highs or local highs, we'll call it. Well, we can always rip longs on green candles. That's not usually good trading. At some point in a really bullish market, that can become the only way to trade, but I still don't think that that is the move right now. The patient trader might be looking for 33 cents. You can see a clear resistance that was blasted through, untested as support, and interesting, kind of in line with XRP there. XRP blasted through a resistance, didn't really pay any attention to it on the way up, and now looking for that entry back at the previous resistance as support. If we don't see that happen, we're looking upwards. 80 cents is the all-time high. That comes from May of 21. May of 21. You know what's interesting? Actually, I never noticed this. Never noticed this on XLM. XLM was around during 2017. Topped out in 2018. But it broke its all-time high in 2021. Not by much, though. That's weird. That's weird. A lot of coins didn't at all. I just like never noticed that. Anyway, coming off this beautiful 20-cent tag, looking to retest, follow XRP. If we break this high, man, I guess new all-time highs, right? Let's see. Break 63, looking at 80, all-time high. Break 80, went up at $1.30. $2 at the measured move target. I kind of like that $2 mark. I think that's a solid place to look. If you're in XLM, if I was heavily in XLM, I have some somewhere, not a real amount, probably a few $100, $1,000. I would probably look to play it this way. Tiny TP. If I had TP'd none, right, at 63, tiny TP at the all-time high, 80 cents. Between these two sells, maybe I would look. It depends how underwater you are. Depends what your position looks like. Maybe like 25% total, 1/4 of the position between these two. If you want to be a little more aggressive, maybe 50%. I would then look, so like, let's say 25 between these two, 25 at $1.30, 25 at $2. That would leave you with a moon bag of 1/4 of the position that you could look to just ride to the moon. What is this? Got an email from Coinbase. It's probably a scam. I swear I get more like BS emails from Coinbase than actual emails. The 50-cent mark, though, is not imaginary. It's not just psychological. It comes from your monthly closes. This is the real resistance. So this is why I am cautioning everyone, even though this looks really bullish. I honestly personally wouldn't bet against this. I'm cautioning people here, ripping them longs, because you're at what I would say is like your major resistance. If you can get past last year's run, things look very, very good for all-time high. In fact, I thought it was going to all-time high last year. It's kind of crazy that it didn't. We got Ethereum. We got XLM. Solana. So real quick, let's pop into this. Solana being basically the next in line here to gain against Bitcoin. If we are going to see dominance continue downward, we would expect some of that downward pressure to come from Solana. So far, I don't know if I'm ready to say it's really ripping, but so far we have not quite seen that. We've had 2 days of up. I'll give it to this. Solana did pierce today. A little double top resistance here from June. Potentially looking to make that move back up to 002. Only because everything else is reversing. I feel like I should apply that here. Right. What do we got? Back to 002, 42%. I think we did this yesterday, and 42% gain put us back at the all-time high, right? Or no, it didn't. Put us at 250. $240, $250. Get rid of that now. Exactly as predicted all the way back here in May. We're past that. Solana looking at 165 still. Looking to play fast and quick 171. Scalp position. I don't like that though. 190 TPs make sense. Where are we at? Bitcoin chilling. Ethereum chilling. XRP really taking the show right now. That hourly now in a red candle from touching the previous all-time high. Not what you want to see, but really not the end of the world. This is not a doomy rejection. So far, just kind of profit taking. Maybe just snapping some longs. Late longs being punished. What else we got? Flare. I haven't looked at Flare in forever, but Flare looks like seems like the things in this ecosystem are pumping right now. And when I say ecosystem, I don't know what. XRP, XLM, Flare, HBAR. I don't even know if they're the same. Flare here as well. Just back to May's high. Remember those two conditions. Look at it. Look at March or April's low. Look at May's high. Did you hold April's low? Yes, you did. Did you break May's high? No, you didn't. Where are you? Right back at May's high. This is a dangerous point to look to long. What I would recommend here, instead of chasing, because tomorrow probably it'll be different coins running. This is starting to feel a lot more like the previous bull runs, which is welcomed. But what I would look for, instead of whatever is running tomorrow, whatever is running today, looking to long those green candles. Look at your altcoins. Look at the things that you believe in. Do this test. April's low. Did it break? If April's low broke, maybe look for something else, basically. That's what I'm going to say. Has May's high broken? Now, this is where it gets spicy. You want something where April's low is held, but May's high has not been broken, because that will give you a better entry and potentially even just a move back to May's high, right? I think a lot of these are going to break May's high. But we're looking for opportunity. We're not looking for the things that have already pumped. When you buy things that have already pumped, you end up buying the top. Don't do that. Even Litecoin here, very close to May's high. About 4% back to May's high. I think that would be too close. TRX. It just doesn't look like anything else. Doesn't look like anything else. Doesn't really fit into that test, which is weird. H bar, May's high is broken. April's low held. Look for this setup. It's visible everywhere in the space. Because here we go. Like, for instance, Bonk, right? Actually, it's really interesting. These coins are doing this same thing. They're ignoring May's high, moving to the next resistance, then pulling back. That's why we're looking for this pullback to 251 for Bonk from 375. So for ADA, for example, maybe that would be like 110. Looking for that skip of May's high into the next resistance. See if I can find a good example. Ooh, M87. I don't know what that is, but that looks pretty good from yesterday. CI. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's this. So if we apply that to Solana, maybe we do look for that 250. Break May's high, move to the next resistance. That's what XLM did. There's a pattern here. May's high, next resistance. Look for that setup. There's opportunity. I didn't even talk about Total 3. That's what I skipped. Total 3 continues upwards. We identified this earlier in the week. May's high has been broken. Honestly, I think Total 3 is going to do the same move that I was just talking about. I think it's going right back to all-time high. Probably consolidate there for a little bit. Whenever Total 3 hits 1.13 trillion, probably a time to have a little caution of opening new positions. Likely going to see a pullback of some kind there. Maybe back to 940 billion. Backtest that previous high. Maybe that'll line up with a lot of the market doing the same move. I'm not sure. Things look good. Things look very good. I didn't want to make this the longest stream. I just wanted to go live for the spicy spice. Let me see how my Ethereum long still holding up. Trading on BYDFI, by the way, guys. Anybody can trade there. You'll get a big bonus using my link. It's in the video description below. It's pinned to the top. Up 96%. It's actually down a little bit. It's down a little bit from earlier. Nice 2.2K in what? A day and a half? Hell yeah. Only in this space, guys. Only in this space. If you're looking to really make the most of this bull run, which I think is now pending, now imminent, check out joincrowncrypto.com. Check it out. It's our new premium group. Because the memberships have been slow now, we had some spice earlier, but it's been slower. I'm offering everyone who signs up some of my time. So if you sign up for a membership, you're going to get a one-on-one meeting with me. We're going to do that until, I don't know, until there's too many people. We made this mistake in 2021, but I want to add value. I want to help you guys navigate this market, and I have the feeling that now is the time. So check it out. You can use promo code VIP, get 50% off. You should do that. There's a new vote going on. Which one's this one? Oh, this is the anti-CBDC Surveillance Act vote. 200 Democrats already voted no. The freaking House and Senate are just ridiculous, man. They're freaking ridiculous. I don't know what the bill says, though. Lord knows what else is in it. But we will be live again tomorrow. We are live here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And obviously, anytime in between, it gets really spicy. I appreciate you tuning in today. Make sure you've subscribed. Join our fam. There's more spice to come. The bull market. The bull market that you are dreaming of is that we're at the footsteps of it. We're almost there. Stay strong. The last thing you want to do is blow yourself out here. Be safe, manage your risk, don't get too greedy. And remember that oftentimes doing nothing will be the most successful maneuver. That advice is worth its weight in gold. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Jump in the Discord and